While my grandfather was fighting for his life in a Manhattan ICU, I got a notification. It wasn't an update on his health. It was a demolition alert for his 150-year-old Brooklyn brownstone. My father wasn't just waiting for him to die. He was cashing in his legacy. Hey everyone, it's Eleanor. And I need to talk about the moment my world fell apart. It wasn't in a shouting match, and it wasn't in a tearful confession. It happened through an automated email while I was sitting in the silent, sterile waiting room of a Manhattan ICU. My grandfather, Arthur, was lying unconscious just a few feet away, fighting for his life after a massive stroke. My phone buzzed. I thought it was an update from my dad, Walter, who was supposedly on a pre-planned family cruise. But it wasn't. It was a permit alert from the New York City Department of Buildings, an email I subscribed to as an architectural historian. It was a notification for an emergency demolition permit filed for my grandfather's 150-year-old Brooklyn brownstone. The applicant was my father. In that one, cold, digital moment, I understood everything. He wasn't just on vacation during a family crisis. He was using it. He was using his father's potential death as a window of opportunity to liquidate his past for a quick cash grab. That brownstone wasn't just a house. It was my grandfather's life, our family's history, a living piece of Brooklyn itself, and my father was about to sell it to the highest bidder for scrap. It's the kind of moment that takes the air from your lungs. If you've ever had a discovery that completely pulled the rug out from under you, just let me know you're here by commenting what time it is where you are right now. It's a small way of saying we're not alone in these moments. I'm seeing times from all over the world in the comments. It's a sobering reminder that a moment of betrayal can strike at any hour. To understand why my father would do something so monstrous, you have to understand the two worlds he was trying to live in. First, there was my grandfather Arthur's world. It was a 19th-century brownstone in Brooklyn, a quiet street lined with old trees. It was a house that smelled of lemon polish and old paper, every floorboard groaning with a century of stories. It represented history, stability, a wealth that wasn't measured in dollars but in memories. Then there was my father Walter's world, a glass and steel high-rise in Manhattan. A world of venture capital, deadlines, and the crushing pressure of his failing tech startup. For the past year, his company had been hemorrhaging money. He was facing angry investors and the humiliating prospect of total bankruptcy. That Brooklyn brownstone wasn't a home to him. It was a lifeline. It was a multi-million-dollar asset he could liquidate to save his own skin. And my grandfather's stroke? For my father, it wasn't a family tragedy. It was a business opportunity. With Arthur incapacitated and unable to protest, my father saw his chance to cash in the family legacy to pay for his own failures. It's a classic conflict, isn't it? The pressure to sacrifice the past to fund a desperate future. I'm curious where you all stand on this. Type preserve in the comments if you believe some things are more important than money, or type profit if you think sometimes you have to make the hard business decision. No judgment, I just want to see what you think. It's fascinating seeing the mix of preserve and profit in the comments. It's clear my father, Walter, landed firmly in the profit at all costs camp. But even with all his desperation, he couldn't legally touch the brownstone. He needed a key, a legal tool to unlock my grandfather's life and sell it off. And he had gotten that key 2 years earlier, through a devastating act of deception. I remember the day he did it. He had come over to the brownstone for a Sunday dinner, armed with a briefcase and a gentle, concerned smile that I now know was completely fake. He spread a stack of documents on the old oak dining table and told my grandfather it was a simple healthcare directive. His exact words were, "Dad, this is just a formality, so I can talk to your doctors if you ever can't. It's just to make sure your wishes are respected." He used words like protection and peace of mind. My grandfather, a man who believed, above all else, in the integrity of his own son, signed it without reading the fine print. But it wasn't a simple healthcare directive. It was a durable power of attorney with sweeping financial authority. It gave my father the legal right to control, mortgage, and sell all of my grandfather's assets, including the house, without any further consent. My father didn't just stumble into a desperate decision when my grandfather had his stroke. He executed a plan using a weapon he had acquired through manipulation years before. He wasn't just a son making a hard choice. He was a predator who had been patiently waiting for the moment to strike. So, with that power of attorney tucked away like a loaded weapon, my father just needed two things: an opportunity and an alibi. My grandfather's stroke provided the opportunity. A non-refundable 7-day Caribbean cruise provided the perfect alibi. The day after Arthur was admitted to the ICU, my father gathered the rest of the family and made the announcement. "We can't cancel," he said, his voice dripping with false regret. "We'd lose thousands. Your grandfather would want us to go." It was a masterful performance. He wasn't just a son going on vacation. He was a martyr, bravely living his life in the face of tragedy. But I knew the truth. That cruise wasn't a vacation, it was a strategy. It created distance. It gave him a plausible excuse for not being in New York while his plan was set in motion. And most importantly, it isolated me. He left me alone to bear the entire emotional weight of the hospital vigil, assuming I'd be too consumed with grief and exhaustion to notice anything else. While I was sleeping in a plastic chair in the ICU, my phone would ping with notifications from my sister, Chloe, posting photos of their departure from the Miami port. There they were, my mother, Helen, and my sister waving from the deck of a massive ship, their smiles as bright and hollow as the cruise director's. 10. It's a chilling feeling when you know you're being lied to. When someone's actions are so disconnected from their words, you can feel the dishonesty in the air. If you've ever had to trust your gut instinct over someone's pretty words, just type the word instinct in the comments. It's a quiet acknowledgement for those of us who have learned to listen to that inner voice. Reading all of your instinct comments, it's a powerful reminder that our gut feelings are often the truest compass we have. My compass was screaming that I was heading into a storm. For the next 3 days, I lived in the strange, suspended reality of the ICU. I watched my grandfather's heart rate on the monitor, I talked to nurses, and I ignored the occasional, breezy text from my sister about the beautiful Caribbean weather. I was exhausted, running on stale coffee and sheer willpower. The proof I was dreading arrived at 2 in the morning on a Tuesday. I was scrolling through my phone, just trying to stay awake, when an email with a brutally bureaucratic subject line popped up. Permit application approved. Brooklyn address. It was from the New York City Department of Buildings. As an architectural historian, I have alerts set up for properties I track. My heart stopped. I opened the email. It was an approved application for an emergency demolition and site clearing permit. Applicant: Walter, on behalf of the owner, Arthur. The cruelty of it took my breath away. He wasn't just selling the house, he was planning to bulldoze it. To physically erase every trace of my grandfather's life, our family's history, from the face of the earth. And the timing? It was perfect. The demolition would happen while he was thousands of miles away on a cruise ship, conveniently unreachable. He could claim it was a misunderstanding with the contractors, a tragic mistake. He wasn't just creating an alibi, he was creating an irreversible fact on the ground. In that moment, something inside me didn't just break, it ignited. This was no longer a family drama, it was a rescue mission. I didn't even log out of my email. I told the charge nurse there was a family emergency, which was the truest thing I'd said all week, grabbed my coat, and ran. The journey from the Manhattan ICU to the brownstone in Brooklyn felt like a race against my own heartbeat. I sat in the back of a yellow cab, the city lights blurring into streaks as we crossed the bridge, my mind racing faster than the taxi. I was frantically trying to call the Department of Buildings, but at 3 in the morning, all I got was a soulless voicemail system. I arrived on the quiet, tree-lined street just as the first hints of dawn were breaking the sky. But the scene wasn't peaceful. A massive construction dumpster was already parked at the curb, and a team of workers was unloading scaffolding from a flatbed truck. They were starting. It was real. I ran up to the site foreman, a burly man with a tired face, and pleaded with him. "You have to stop," I gasped, holding up my phone with the email. "The owner of this house is in the ICU. He didn't authorize this." The foreman just sighed and showed me a signed work order on his clipboard, complete with a copy of the demolition permit. "Look, lady," he said, not unkindly, "I've got my orders. It's all legal. Now please, step aside." But I couldn't. I wouldn't. So I did the only thing I could think of. I walked up the front steps, turned around, and stood in front of the main door, blocking the entrance with my own body. a one-woman barricade against a wrecking ball. Standing there on those cold stone steps, a lone protester against a team of construction workers, I knew I couldn't hold them off for long. My physical presence was just a temporary roadblock. I couldn't win this fight with my body. I had to win it with my brain. My father had forgotten one crucial detail in his perfectly callous plan. He was trying to destroy a historic building, and he had raised an architectural historian. I pulled out my laptop right there on the porch. The foreman was on the phone, likely getting new orders, and I knew I only had minutes. I opened the website for the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission and started typing. I filed an emergency request for evaluation for the property. This wasn't a desperate plea from a sad granddaughter. It was a professional, evidence-based application. I cited the building's original 1,882nd cast-iron facade, a rare surviving example of its kind. I attached my own archived photos of the untouched mahogany staircase and the hand-carved fireplace mantels. I wrote about the building's original architect and its role in the neighborhood's history. I was using the very passion he had always dismissed as a useless hobby as my primary weapon. I hit submit just as the foreman walked back toward me, his face grim. It was the moment I realized that our useless's knowledge can sometimes become our most powerful weapon. We all have a unique skill, a secret expertise. I want you to share in the comments. What is your superpower? Are you a great listener, a baker, a coder, a gardener? Let's celebrate the skills that make us who we are. I love seeing all your incredible superpowers in the comments. In that moment, my only superpower was a Wi-Fi signal and a prayer. The foreman walked back up the steps, his face set like concrete. "All right, lady, I've been patient," he said, pulling out his phone. "You've got 10 seconds before I call the police and have you removed for trespassing." My heart hammered against my ribs. I had no legal right to be there. My plan, my desperate digital plea, felt like a long shot. Just as he started to dial, my phone buzzed in my hand. It was an email with the official seal of the City of New York at the top. Subject: Emergency Stop, Work Order, Brooklyn Address. My application had been flagged, fast-tracked, and reviewed by an on-duty commissioner. It stated that due to a pending landmark evaluation and evidence of potential irreversible harm, all construction and demolition activities at the site were to cease immediately, pending a full hearing. My hands were shaking as I held the phone out to the foreman. "I don't think you'll need to make that call," I said. He squinted at the screen, his expression shifting from annoyance to grudging respect. He let out a long, weary sigh, then turned to his crew. "All right, pack it in," he yelled. "City's put a hold on it." I stood on that porch and watched them lower the scaffolding and lock the gates. I hadn't won the war, not even close. But I had won the first battle. I had bought my grandfather's house a few more days to live. And I knew, somewhere in the middle of the Caribbean, my father's vacation was about to be ruined. It took exactly 4 hours for the shockwave of my stop work order to travel from Brooklyn to the middle of the Caribbean Sea. My phone rang, and the caller ID didn't say, "Dad." It just said, "Walter." I answered. The sound that came through the speaker wasn't a voice, it was a roar. He screamed about the developers, about the multi-million-dollar deal I had just sabotaged, about the public humiliation. "You and your useless little hobby," he yelled, his voice cracking with fury. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Then came the threats. "That's it. You're cut off," he spat. "Your tuition, your apartment, every penny. You are on your own. And I am using my power of attorney to have you barred from the hospital. You will not see your grandfather. You will have no say in his care. You are no longer his granddaughter. You are a problem to be managed." He was trying to use my deepest love, my connection to my grandfather, as a weapon to break me. He thought that by threatening to take away the one person I had left, he could force me back into submission. But he didn't realize that in fighting for my grandfather, I had already found a strength he couldn't touch. To be threatened by your own family, to have them use your love for someone against you, it's a level of betrayal that leaves a deep scar. I want to know if you've ever had to choose between doing what's right and keeping the peace with your family. If you've faced that impossible choice, just type the word choice in the comments. It's a quiet way of saying I see you. Seeing all of your choice comments, it's a heavy, but powerful thing to know so many of us have faced those crossroads. My father thought he had cornered me. He had the power, the lawyers, and the money. He thought he had taken my last piece, my grandfather, off the board. What he didn't count on was a miracle. A few days after that threatening phone call, I was sitting by Arthur's bedside, reading to him from an old history book, when his hand squeezed mine. His eyes opened, and for the first time in weeks, they weren't hazy or distant. They were focused. On me. He was back. This small sign of life triggered a series of legal moves. As part of the landmark case, the city sent a neutral competency evaluator to the hospital to ascertain my grandfather's wishes. My father and his lawyer were there, of course, looking smug, ready to see the evaluator confirm that Arthur was completely unresponsive. The evaluator asked him simple questions. He struggled. His words were slurred. Then, she pulled out a large, clear photograph of the Brooklyn brownstone and held it up for him. "Arthur," she asked gently, "can you tell me what you want to be done with this house?" My father started to object, but the evaluator silenced him with a look. My grandfather stared at the photo, his eyes filling with a sudden, sharp clarity. He looked from the picture to me, and then back to the evaluator. His voice was just a dry whisper, barely audible, but every single person in that room heard him say, "Save it, tell Eleanor, save it." In that moment, the entire case shifted. My father's argument that he was acting in his father's best interest vaporized. The man they had all written off had just become the most powerful witness in the room. That one whispered phrase from my grandfather, "Save it," was a legal bombshell. The competency evaluator's report was submitted to the Landmarks Preservation Commission, and it was irrefutable. It was a clear statement of my grandfather's wishes, made in a moment of confirmed lucidity. Combined with the mountain of historical evidence I had already provided, the Commission's decision was swift and unanimous. They voted to grant the Brooklyn brownstone official landmark status. For those who don't know, in New York City, that designation is an iron shield. It means the building cannot be demolished. It means its historic character must be preserved. It meant my father's multi-million-dollar deal with the developers, who wanted to bulldoze the property and build a glass condo, was instantly dead. The phone call he got from them must have been brutal. With his last-ditch funding source gone, his startup imploded. The investors pulled out, and he was forced to file for bankruptcy a week later. His desperate, greedy gamble had resulted in his total ruin. There was no joy in watching him fail, but there was a profound sense of justice. He had tried to erase my grandfather's legacy for a quick profit, and in the end, the legacy had erased his future instead. A few weeks later, a small, official bronze plaque was installed next to the front door of the brownstone, a permanent declaration that this place mattered, that its history was worth more than money. It was a victory, not just for me, but for my grandfather. He had saved his own home. That bronze plaque on the front of the house wasn't an ending, it was a foundation. After my grandfather passed away peacefully the following year, the brownstone officially became mine. I could have sold it then, taken the money and started a new life far away from New York. But I realized the fight wasn't just about saving a building, it was about honoring a legacy. So, I didn't sell. I rebuilt. I poured my heart, and the funds my grandfather had left me, into turning the brownstone into the headquarters for the new Arthur Last Name Foundation for Architectural Preservation. Today, the rooms that once echoed with my family's bitter arguments now host workshops for aspiring young historians. The library where my grandfather read his books is now a research center. We fund fellowships for students who, like me, believe that our history is worth fighting for. My story began with a fight to stop a demolition, but it ended with the beginning of a new construction, the building of a community. The lesson I learned is that a legacy isn't what's written in a will, it's what's preserved in our actions. True wealth isn't the cash you can liquidate, it's the history, the love, and the integrity you refuse to sell. Sometimes, you have to fight the people you love to protect the things you love more. If you believe in fighting for the things that truly matter, then hit that subscribe button and join this community. Let's be the people who remember what's worth preserving. Thank you for listening.